There was a time when people knew their neighbors, when you walked outside and recognized faces, when community wasn't something you had to search for, it was just there, built into everyday life. So, what happened? This is the Quiet Republic. It wasn't that long ago that you could walk through almost any neighborhood and see life happening. Kids riding bikes through the streets, someone grilling in their backyard, a game of basketball on the street corner, someone walking their dog or jogging. You felt it. And I remember growing up in a neighborhood like that. I had friends nearby, and my parents knew the neighbors. There was a sense that you were part of something, even if it was small. But now, you drive through most neighborhoods and you see nothing. Doors closed, cars in driveways, people inside. And it's not just a feeling. Around half of people today say they feel lonely, isolated, disconnected. That's not a small shift. That's nearly half of us. And I feel it too. Everything started feeling transactional. Get in, get what you need, get out, get back home, and get inside. It's a strange kind of isolation. Not being alone, but feeling alone in a world full of people. I don't think it was always like that. So what changed? And when did it change? Community didn't disappear overnight. It was designed out of our lives. And I don't mean that in like some conspiratorial way. I don't believe that anybody sat in some back room and made a decision to end community. I mean something simpler and maybe more dangerous. There was a series of changes, economic, technological, and cultural, that pushed us all in the same direction, and that's away from one another. So let's break it down. After World War II, America exploded. Populations boomed and cities expanded, and suburbs spread outward at a massive scale. And with that expansion, something subtle but important happened. We began designing life around cars. Distance increased and space widened. And suddenly, community wasn't outside your door like it used to be. You had to drive to see people, drive to gather, and drive to exist socially. And if you didn't live in a major city, public transportation was almost non existent. So the first shift was actually pretty simple. We became physically separated. Then came the economic shift. From the 1980s on, something changed. Productivity kept rising, but wages stagnated. And that gap had consequences. Whereas before one income could have sustained a household, now for most people it required two. So more hours, more stress, and less time overall. Gen X became the latchkey generation for a reason. Both parents working and kids coming home to empty houses. And it didn't stop with them. Millennials, Gen Z, Gen Alpha. Productivity became a virtue. We started to build our identities around being busy, and hustle became something to aspire to. But community, that takes time. Time we don't really have anymore. Then comes the accelerant, technology. And this might be the biggest single force of all. And it starts small. Televisions enter the home. Suddenly, entertainment doesn't require going out. You don't need the town square. You don't need theater. You can stay inside. And that trend, it only compounds over decades. TVs become computers, which become gaming systems, which become online worlds. And none of these things are inherently bad, but they all share a trait. They give you a reason not to leave. Then the internet arrives, and now you can connect with anyone, anytime, anywhere. And in 2007, the iPhone comes out. Now, all that's in your pocket. Endless content, endless interactions, endless stimulation. Social media platforms optimized to keep you engaged, scrolling, clicking, dopamine on demand. And here's the paradox. We've never been more connected, and we've never felt more alone. because digital connection is not the same as physical presence. It's a substitute. And like most substitutes, it's not enough. And then there's the final layer. We're more divided now than we've been in a very long time, politically, culturally, socially. Now, some division is probably natural, maybe even necessary, but I think something deeper is going on. We've replaced physical communities with abstract ones. Your tribe used to be your neighborhood, your family, the people you saw every day. Now, it's a political party, an online group, a media ecosystem. We're tribal by nature. That hasn't changed. But now our tribes are distant, disembodied, and really entirely conceptual. And when your community exists on your phone, your neighbor becomes a stranger or worse, an enemy. We cheer for our side and we distrust the other, often without ever even speaking to them. So around 2010, something else starts to crop up in the data. A sharp rise in anxiety, depression, and loneliness. Mental health in general, especially among the younger generations. And while there's a lot of factors involved, one pattern does kind of keep appearing. The more time we spend in digital spaces, the worse we feel. Now, to be clear, technology isn't the sole cause. I'm not saying that. But it isn't neutral either, because the systems behind it are built for a specific goal: engagement, attention, and time. The longer you stay on a platform, the more valuable you are to that platform. And that creates a kind of feedback loop. Content is optimized to keep you scrolling, to keep you reacting, and to keep you coming back. And the bottom line is, lobotomized consumers are exactly what the system rewards. Consumers who don't think or question or act only get outraged by whatever their parasocial tribe is currently outraged by. Consumers who buy the shit they're supposed to buy and file in a line towards their dead-end, meaningless jobs, the ones that have to work just to barely scrape by. But meanwhile, these socials and algorithms, they pull us deeper into our screens, further away from physical space and one another. And here's the reality: a disconnected population is easier to control than a truly connected one. And it's not because people are weak, it's because connection builds resilience. It builds trust, understanding, and community. The ability to organize and push back, to think clearly. When that is hauled out, something else begins to fill the gaps. These algorithms, media ecosystems, and echo chambers, they reinforce whatever position we currently hold. They entrench us in our biases and conspiracies, and they feed us an endless stream of curated reality. So, what's the cost of all this? It's connection, meaning, a slow drifting away from one another in almost every part of our life. Shared values start to fade. Not because we stopped caring, but because we stopped experiencing life together. And in that absence, other things start to fill the void: certainty, tribalism, and outrage. We stopped talking to each other and started defining one another. And if I'm honest, I miss a version of the world where you could disagree with someone and not hate them. There's a strange feeling that comes along with this, and it's like we don't quite belong anywhere. Not to anything physical, not to anything shared. There's just fragments, digital spaces and echo chambers, pseudo communities. We're simultaneously more connected than ever, and yet somehow we're alone inside it all. We're more anxious and more angry, more disconnected, replacing real community with content. And honestly, that makes me sad. It makes me wish I could go back to something simpler, something more grounded. But the truth is, that nostalgic version of the world probably never really existed. At least not the way I remember it. Not fully. So, what do we do? I'm not going to pretend that there's some easy fix or that I have all the answers. Getting off your phone will suddenly rebuild society. And these problems run deeper than technology, and they always have. But I do think the first step is simple and uncomfortable. We have to start talking to each other again, in person, in tension, sometimes vehemently and in disagreement. Because the space we can disagree without hatred, that's where real community begins. That's where ideas are sharpened. That's where trust is built. That's where a future worth living in actually forms. So, yeah, get off your phone and go talk to someone. This is the Quiet Republic.